Dan, how about if we get started? We're going to today take a look at the XchangeCore community and the resources that we have to bring to the community, which are based on a number of different tools that have been developed and resources that are now available. They begin with the XchangeCore Communicator newsletter, which I hope all of you noticed was new this week around, the XchangeCore webinars, the new website, and the XchangeCore blog. And then we'll conclude by talking about some of the next steps for the community. So if we go on to the next slide, let's talk about the community itself. First of all, everyone is welcome. Key component of this community, from federal, state, local governments, tribal, the military, private sector, critical infrastructure, everybody becomes part of the XchangeCore community. Because our message is very clear that the exchanging information to improve preparedness and response is an absolutely incredible component, an essential component of emergency management today. As a result, the XchangeCore community welcomes all views from inside and outside of government, and what our focus really is going to be on how we express those views to each other. And that's really the essence of what I hope I leave with you today, is that this is yours now. Previously, the Department of Homeland Security and then the Department of Defense were all supporting and really driving the XchangeCore community, then called USIDS, then on the military side called Keystone. But now it's the community that drives. As you've heard in past discussions, that DHS has funded the transition. We've graduated from the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. And there's a nonprofit, the National Institute for Hometown Security, that is now supporting the XchangeCore community. And as a result, there are many things that we can do, I'll say differently, many of them I think better than when it was simply a DHS program. And you've seen some of those changes take place in the discussions we've had over the last few weeks as we've explored and examined what the XchangeCore is becoming. Some of those include, and we'll highlight some of it here, the operation of the XchangeCore on the Linux operating system and the new movement to Microsoft SQL as one of the options that you have, all of which we couldn't do before because of contractual requirements. And I think that you're going to see the community has the opportunity to drive this enterprise in the future. So let's take a look, beginning at some of those on the next slide, some of the tools that we have to communicate, share information, because that really is the essence of what the community does. And here's a little snapshot of part of the opening page of the XchangeCore Communicator, recently published for the first time. And its tagline, information to improve your information exchange, because that helps to improve your emergency response. And as that lead article said, together we're going to shape this future. So that becomes one very, very important tool that we have in the XchangeCore community for sharing information. If we take a look at the next slide, you're going to see that one of the important things that we want to be able to do is get you involved. So please, it's now your job to tell your friends, tell your colleagues, subscribe to XchangeCore, because when your police chief, when that fire chief understands the importance of sharing information the way we describe it here, or when that next jurisdiction understands it, you're going to begin to, within your own community, with your own private public interfaces, be able to do a better job of managing emergency response. So it now becomes part of the community responsibility to promote itself. And that begins by just telling your colleagues at the next local emergency planning committee meeting or your next emergency management meeting in a jurisdiction or your next conference, say, you know what, we're going to be able to do a better job of exchanging information because XchangeCore exists. All right. Here's how all of this begins to play out. And the next slide is not coming up on my side. There we go. Next piece is for you to be able to contribute, to be able to provide that information that you have and be able to push it out to other people, to be able to help them learn and see the importance of exchanging information and the value of XchangeCore as a tool for being able to do that. So contribute to the newsletter. In the past, you've seen, in many cases, we've had other organizations that have been able to provide information about their exercises, actual implementations. We've covered those. You saw some of the information that was provided by the U.S. Geological Survey and Open Geospatial Consortium in the last one. Let us know what you want to have communicated through the XchangeCore communicator. On the next slide, what we're going to do is take a look at the next of these tools that we have, and that's what we're doing right now, the XchangeCore webinar. Happens every other Thursday, holidays accepted, of course, and we have focused on both operational and technical discussions. Sometimes these are tutorials by the XchangeCore team. Other times they're experiences that XchangeCore implementations share with us. You've heard several times about the group out in California that's done a number of exercises. We've heard from South Carolina and Richmond and a number of different places over the years. You want to be able to draw those out as your XchangeCore implementation comes into play. Exercise reports, very important because that's where we're all learning the best lessons that we possibly can. We've heard from technology partners talking about the capabilities that they bring to the implementation of XchangeCore, and a number of government program reviews, some of which have been ones that have been associated with XchangeCore. Other ones were information exchange programs that we're able to share information with you so that you're able to get a better picture of what's happening out there in the whole broad-based information exchange community. Because, as you'll see later, that's one of the things that XchangeCore does. We embrace all the different technologies because there is no one answer. That's why XchangeCore was built the way it is, that it connects to all of the other different information sharing programs in order to be able to bring all of them together. Not a single answer out there. If we take a look at the next slide, you're going to see some of the other things that we want to be able to talk about. And one of those is that these webinars, we always announce them in the new XchangeCore communicator. List of them there. We have one scheduled for October 9th, but you have a couple of jobs now as part of the community. Got 4 programs there that I've been thinking about, sort of a connector development initial course, how to put together a plan for putting together a multiple agency implementation, XchangeCore, and the iPause, another one of those information sharing programs. iPause, the public alerting and warning system. That's one of the things that XchangeCore connects with. It might be one of the topics we want to talk about, as well as just how data moves through XchangeCore, both operationally and technically. Well, now we're part of a community. I'd like to hear from you. Which ones of these are important? Which ones should we be focusing on initially? Do you want to start technically? Do you want to start operationally? XchangeCore.org website down there. There's a place in the back called Join Me that allows you to be able to send messages into us. Tell us what you want to see as part of the webinars that are coming up in the next month. So that's one of the tasks. that we have for you. Next slide is going to let us probe this a little bit further by taking a look at the website. And the website has many parts, and you can get on here and take a look at it, but I'm going to highlight the approach that we took in the website because it really helps to reflect exactly what the XchangeCore community is all about. And first of all, it's not a thing anymore. Maybe originally the old usage or Keystone, their goal was to be a piece of software, that was the deliverable to the Department of Homeland Security. But now it's a complex of things. It is, of course, the software, but it's also the ability to take that software and manipulate it, thus the XchangeCore code and the open source repository that we have. It's the ability to use XchangeCore simply and easily, the XchangeCore cloud that we'll talk about in a minute. It's also the XchangeCore relationship with geospatial, and thus ArcGIS Online as the geospatial repository that connects into XchangeCore. And then finally, the XchangeCore community is the other piece of XchangeCore itself. If we take a look at the next slide, what I'm going to do is go through each one of these, highlight some of the components of all of the 5 major elements that you see listed there. And beginning on the next one, we're going to go through and take a look at each one of these just very briefly and draw back to what the community does in relationship to each one of these 5 components. So it begins with the software itself, the XchangeCore Web Service Data Orchestration Software. Lots of information in there. The tab that you see there, the second one from the left, gets you all the information about XchangeCore itself. And the important part for the community, though, is shown over on the next slide, where what you want to do is register to get that software. If you've got an old usage or you have an old Keystone, new version that is XchangeCore 1.1.3 is currently available, and here is how you get it under that tab on the XchangeCore. You've got that, and on the next slide, it's your encouragement to go ahead, register, and get the latest XchangeCore Web Service Data Orchestration software. Now, I'm going to be very clear on this, that through our arrangement with the Department of Homeland Security, XchangeCore is free to responder agencies. So you'll be asked down there towards the bottom on that slide of which responder agency you are, who you're going to be connecting. Give us a little bit of information about that background. So there's a task for you. Get up to speed, bring XchangeCore into your community, and if you're already using one of the usage or Keystone versions, bring it up to XchangeCore itself. Keystone you'll actually be getting from the Army's Armament Research and Development Engineering Center because it comes through the .mil, but you still should be able to, we will pass that request on, bringing it through this process. So, next slide then. Is part of the XchangeCore itself, how it functions. And here, under that XchangeCore tab, is a whole set of documents and training. A number of our initial documents on how to set things up, the architecture description document, Linux installation guide. There are maybe a dozen of these when you pull up the full page. A couple of real-time training sessions that help get you started in that. And that's another piece. On the next slide, again, a request out to the community. Take a look at this documentation. Tell us what's missing. Tell us what your training needs are to better use XchangeCore, because community members will direct the next versions of all these documents and the next focus that we have on individual training programs. So another charge to all of you is to help direct the development of documents and training. And I should note also we've had other organizations. That Linux installation guide is a good example. That was written by the community. A combination of Spot-On Response, a private company, and Indiana University put together information on a couple of different ways to install XchangeCore on Linux. So important to understand that not only can you direct, but you can contribute to this body of knowledge that we have. Let's take a look at the next slide now, because we're going to move into the code itself. And those of you who were on the calls a while back about the open source library, our XchangeCore, all the connector code is now up on GitHub, and on our next call, we'll be learning about the availability of XchangeCore 2.0 that we'll be talking about on the 9th of October, I believe it is. But there are reasons for having done open source, and those reasons are for sustainability of the project itself, to make certain that people are contributing, that code is being developed at the direction of the member community, and that input from many different organizations gets vetted, approved, and included in the XchangeCore code repository. And when we come up to the next call on the 9th of October, you're going to see one of the biggest examples of that, of all of the military project that has been going on for the last close to 2 years. That code is being incorporated back into the XchangeCore baseline and becomes the new XchangeCore 2.0. So think of XchangeCore 2.0 as everything that was good about usage added to everything that was good about what the military has done, plus some of the private sector contributions. That's how XchangeCore 2.0 has been created. And that source code is yours. So as we take a look at the next slide, you're going to begin to see the ways in which all the training and support are available to help make that fit exactly what you want it to do. Because if it's not going to meet your needs, it's not going to be very useful. So this is a set of documents that help us to understand what it is that XchangeCore can do and teach you, your technical people, how to go about doing it. All the quick start guides are there, tech tips are there, training programs are there, and again, with the same request that we had before, if there are gaps, tell us. Fill them or tell us, and we'll set about to fix those gaps that might exist in the training programs. In the next slide, we take a look at this a little bit more detail, because one of the things that we want to do is help you. So there's in one of the tabs, in the code tab there, it's a chance for you to register your XchangeCore code connector project. And by registering that, you're going to get support from the XchangeCore team, and you're going to get support from your colleagues who may very well have had experience with the kind of things that you're doing. If we go on to the next slide, we'll see that it's valuable to be able to take that connector data and connect it to things. In this case, the external application that the connection is most importantly made to, in this part of the program, our fourth tab over there, is geospatial. Because geospatial is an important, extremely important part of emergency management, and as well, as a result, it has to be an important part of XchangeCore. But XchangeCore doesn't do geospatial. It's not a GIS. Nobody ever hinted that it might even want to be a GIS, because there are lots of those out there that are extraordinary. What XchangeCore can do is empower GIS, empower geospatial by providing the non-geospatial information, geospatially enabling it, and being able to integrate it in with the geographic information system. On the next slide, we see that one of the important ones that we focused on is ArcGIS Online. And here's a perfect example of the community coming together to build
the XchangeCore connector for ArcGIS Online. The project was funded in part by California Office of Emergency Services. It had support from ESRI, the manufacturer of ArcGIS Online. It had support contributed by Leidos, and the actual work was done by Spot On Response. So private sector, public sector, and the technology provider themselves in ESRI led to the development of the geospatial repository for XchangeCore. Great example of pulling all those themes together. On the next slide, what we want to do is help you understand more about how you get that connector, because it's a very, very valuable tool. Has much more to be done to it, but as it stands now, was recently used in not only some exercises in California, but in the Napa earthquake that took place. Connector was used and able to share some very valuable information among geospatial organizations, as well as bringing non-geospatial information into geospatial. So register, another task for you. Register to get that XchangeCore connector. When you get on the website, down at the bottom, you've got some checkboxes about what it is that you want to get, and we'll deliver it out to you and be able to provide that information that will help you implement that very, very quickly and begin bringing that ArcGIS Online that many of you use into play. Not to shortchange anybody, though, Google Earth connects with XchangeCore. OpenStreetMaps connect with XchangeCore. Google Maps connects with XchangeCore. So XchangeCore has connectivity with all the major geospatial organizations and products, has a special use of ArcGIS Online because of its ready availability to the emergency management community to be able to store and create lots of valuable information that can be shared through XchangeCore. So if we take a look at the next slide, what we're going to see is that part of that geo component there in that geographic tab is, again, a resource for the community. Let's brag about what we've done. The geospatial data visualization gallery is there. And if we look at the next slide, another appeal out to all of you is contribute your images. You've got a good picture, either geospatial or non-geospatial. You got XchangeCore data moving through there. Well, send it. Give me a couple of sentences about it, and we'll get it posted up onto the website so that everybody can begin to be inspired by all the different ways in which others are using XchangeCore data. This continues on the next slide, the importance of doing this, because training again, in the part of the website, training and documentation, here is the working draft for the XchangeCore connector for ArcGIS Online. And on the next slide, we again reinforce that you need to tell us what you need. You take a look at that and you say, I didn't understand this part, let me know, because the community needs to help build the training requirements and the delivery of training for the entire community. On our next slide, what we've got is the fourth component of the broad picture of the XchangeCore ecosystem, if you will, and that's the XchangeCore Cloud. And the cloud truly is a product of the community already. If we take a look at the next slide, you see what we talked about in our last call, that the community is actually offering this cloud. On the left-hand side, we've got a commercial offering for subscription hosting of XchangeCore from Spot On Response. If you want to work XchangeCore out of a private data center, either installing it in your own or running out of the Leidos data center, that's a resource that the community has brought forward. And then finally, on the Got Mill side, ARDEC, the Armament Research Development Engineering Center of the Army, has stood up and said we understand XchangeCore. They have developed the Keystone version of it and offer support to the .mil. So that's one of the essential components that we're going to see unfold in the coming months, is the community itself coming forward saying, I have resources that I can offer to others, sometimes free, as you've seen in the Linux installation guides that were done. Other times, as in all three of these cases here, it's a commercial or for-profit enterprise or a for-cost enterprise to provide services to you. And other organizations will have the opportunity to join either in the cloud support or any other type of support and be able to promote it through the community by recognition, just as we have done with these three organizations. On our next slide, we take a look at the last piece of this, and that's the XchangeCore Community. The community really has four resources. The newsletter, we talked about that already, the website that we focused on. Now a couple of webinars that we mentioned. Now I'm going to focus more on exchange among yourselves, and that's through the blog, a web blog. Everybody has blogs out there. I was personally skeptical of them for a long time, but in putting together the XchangeCore one and drawing together other important sources of information, I've come to believe it's a very valuable way for the community to talk to itself. And you're going to see that's our approach to the blog is a little bit different than many other ones. But let's go to the next slide and see what the base component of it is. And you see down at the bottom the XchangeCore Community blogs. On the next slide, I'm going to focus on what that means. Just like I said earlier, that there's no single answer, and as a result, XchangeCore connects into other information exchange environments like iPause. In exactly that way, there are many answers to the interoperability challenge that we face. As a result, we need to hear many voices. So the XchangeCore blog is not a blog. It's a community of blogs. And here are some that I've picked out from having looked at them. And what we want you to do is suggest others. But the Open Hazards blog, very good one with actually some very nice tools associated in it. We're talking about hazard awareness and hazard alerting. The Trusted Operations by Eric Kantz. Eric's been a long-time participant in XchangeCore and the community for, he's probably one of the few people who has been around as long as I have. Has an excellent blog that helps keep everyone in touch. A couple blogs that are supported by Emergency Management Magazine and then Federal Emergency Management's blog that's useful. We need to hear many voices, and this is our way of doing that is by promoting and eventually going to make some cross-posting among these blogs so that everybody doesn't have to look at all 6 of them, but can find the ones that they want. These are ones that have a decent, certainly not all of them having a specific focus on technology or interoperability, but a decent frequency of discussing the problems that we're all facing in sharing information. So the XchangeCore blog is many blogs. And if we go on to the next page, you're going to see my appeal that if you're already blogging independently or part of some other organization, tell me. Bring your information to me. We'll have your blog posted in here. We can talk about cross-posting capabilities so that you get more attention to your blog, and your blog will be able to draw attention to others, all part of the community. Next slide is going to take us a little bit further into this and into specifically the XchangeCore blog. Here, in that web page that you see there, clicking on the image brings us to the XchangeCore blog. If we go on to the next slide, we'll take a look at that. You go through and give it a little bit of a push here. Because, again, as I pointed out, many blogs are a voice speaking to others. Ours is a community. Therefore, the opening page of our blog. It's called Start a Discussion. And unlike some of the other blogs where an author writes and people comment, if we go into the next slide, you see that the opening page of the XchangeCore blog is for you to start out with a comment. And this comment we will then turn into one of the postings on the blog, which will then get other comments. So without you spending any time other than writing your thoughts, you can originate a blog commentary inside of XchangeCore and begin that thread of discussions that's so important for keeping a blog alive, useful, and important to everybody. The next slide is going to take us a little bit further in how we do that, because not only can you go into that comment and begin a single post, if you want to use the XchangeCore to become your place to blog, we invite you to do so. Let me know, and we'll create an entire theme, tab, chapter, set of subjects, however you decide you'd like to have that done, so you can get your ideas in writing to help others about the XchangeCore related technologies. We're not going to monitor these. This is something done on a professional courtesy basis, so I'm not going to be approving what you write. What I'm giving you is a forum and a way to get in to talk to the XchangeCore community. So, not only is XchangeCore Community a community of blogs, but we're inviting the community to become bloggers, to become occasional contributors by leaving the comment off on the left-hand side. If you'd like to be a consistent contributor, we'll sign you up, give you a section, and make you part of this blog. On the next page points you to the second tab, the right-hand tab in the XchangeCore blog, and that is the place where you continue the conversation. By clicking on that, you get to see the list of all the current blogs that exist, blog themes that exist there. Here you see one on what XchangeCore does and how it works with common operating pictures. So this is where you see what someone else has written, and if we go to the next slide, and you then begin to respond back, which you do by clicking on that topic. When you mouse over it, it turns into a little underlined link, and on the next slide you see same type of a format as we saw earlier to leave a comment down there. This is when you're just a reactor to information that people have rather than an originator, but what it's doing is getting a comment on those discussions so you can get your views on that particular topic, describe problems with that thinking or needs that arise to you about it, and begin that thread of discussion. So this is the page where you keep the discussion going, and everybody gets to be able to share the information that they're learning about in general, interoperability, more specifically emergency management interoperability, and most specifically experiences with XchangeCore. So let's grab the next slide then and just give you a couple of quick highlights. You can cut things. Obviously, there's not much up there now, but there will be. Under the archives, each month gets separately archived. So you can click in there and see the what's been happening over the last month. And on the next slide, it shows that there are categories of Exchange here, and we have a technical discussion and an operational discussion, and then the, what do they call that, uncategorized. But as we understand more what people are talking about, we can build additional discussion topics there, and this then gets you to bring together all the blog topics and the comments related to any of the specific categories of discussion that we have there. So if we go on to the next slide. The concluding slides. It's all about you. The community is you. So under the bottom top right-hand tab on the website, the XchangeCore Community is a tab that says Join Us. And that's what we need to do. those of you who are on the call are already members of the XchangeCore community, but you need to share this. You need to push this out to others who have similar needs or interests about projects, about the things that you're trying to do, so that we can get the newsletter out to everybody, get people coming back in, sharing information through the blogs, attending webinars. That's what this forum does. So this is the way that you can bring information into the attention of the XchangeCore team, but more importantly, it's where people can become part of the community by registering here. And on the next slide, I think I emphasize that by telling you to, if you're not already a member, join, but definitely tell your colleagues across your jurisdiction, or if you're in the private sector or across your company, about the community, because that's the way we're going to grow. And through growth, we're going to have greater and greater technical successes that will lead to greater operational successes. On the next slide, what do you need to do? Well, this is just a summary of what I've been saying. You need to tell your colleagues. You need to let us know what topics you want to have in the webinar. When we get the software, bring your documentation and training needs to us, register to become a connector project, register to get that ArcGIS Online connector and all the other connectors that are out there on GitHub. Send us images so people understand in the gallery what you're doing. Help understand what you can offer to the community, whether it's free or whether it's at cost. All those offers are welcome. The blog comments is critical, and then become a sponsor blogger. XchangeCore, that sort of says here, I'm going to be speaking as part of the community continually and frequently. On the next slide, let's open it up to see what we're going to be doing over the next period of time, October 8th. I may have said 9th before. It's October 8th, I think. XchangeCore 2.0. And after that, unscheduled. A few topics there that I mentioned earlier. Hopefully, a few of you will say, hey, I'd like to see this one before this one, or come up with other topics, because what else is very, very important. Then finally, on our next slide, the microphone is open. Questions, comments, you're the community. Let's hear what you have to say or think, new ideas, or questions about what we've just talked about.
Hi, Jim. This is Phil Balin, City Walnut Creek, California. And I wondered
Hello,
if it would
Phil.
be possible, if it would be possible to create another subgroup that looked at ways of combining the information not in using a specific application, but the way people could use the data to synthesize or aggregate the information, and that way we could see, now that we can put all these pieces together, how we might use them together, regardless really of what software we use, but just an analysis capability.
I think that's a great idea, Phil. I think you'd be a super blogger for us there. I know on other times we've talked about this, and you will be getting an invitation to join us in a group that we might call analysis or something like that. We can think of a name for it, but I think that would be great, and I think this might be a good place for you to be able to put some of your thoughts down. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for that. That nobody ever volunteers or offers information without being volunteered for something, right?
No, that's fine. I'm happy to.
Yeah, great, Phil. I appreciate that. Other thoughts, comments? All right, hearing none. Anybody have any parting thoughts? If not, then let me wish you all an excellent couple of weeks, and we'll join again on, I think that said, the 8th of October, and learn all about the newest version of XchangeCore 2.0 and how you can get it, and all the brand new things that it does. So all the best, everybody. Have a good couple of weeks, and thanks for calling in today. Bye now.